Hey there everyone, it is Irene Lyon here. I'm recording this on Instagram. I don't know if I'm going to do something with this video, but I'm answering a comment, if you will, that someone had just a few days ago. And the question or the comment was related to another piece of education. I think it was most likely a complex piece of information about the nervous system and working with, I think it was maybe the fear response. I can't remember, it's not important. But what they had said was that they were just so stunned and amazed that the way I taught, the way I educated, all that stuff, it was the first time, or one of the first times, that they heard that kind of information and it actually made sense. So it actually made sense. So that the information wasn't new to them, but it actually went into their cells, it went into their somatic being, and it really landed. And so yesterday, about 24 hours ago, I posed the question. I screenshot that comment and I said to you all here, why do you think that is? Because it's not simple. And so I posed the question, I put a little poll or a little thing where you can tell me what your answer is, and you all had 100% accurate answers. Many of them were around just my regulation, how I embody this work, and all that is true. But what I want to do is I want to break down, I have a post-it note here with 6 reasons why I believe when you're learning from me, and this isn't going to be everyone, I am getting more of these comments that when you're learning through my videos, my articles, but mainly my videos, something's really landing. So the first one is what most of you said, and that is I'm regulated in my nervous system, and that is accurate. I do have a regulated, robust autonomic nervous system. I've done a lot of work, and while I still am processing old trauma, and I'm getting now into past life trauma, now that I've created enough capacity and regulation in my system, it's like I'm going to that next step. So that's one way of saying, it's another piece of education there, that just because we are regulated in our autonomic nervous system does not mean that we will not have other traumatic events to deal with. Just like, and knock on wood, let's hope this doesn't happen, let's say tomorrow I hurt myself, or something occurs that is out of my control and it is a traumatic event. That's going to happen to people who are regulated as well. It is less likely to happen to people who have solid regulation and safety on board because they are more attuned to their environment. They don't walk down dark alleys that are, to use that as a metaphor, without feeling into whether or not that is safe. We're more attuned to our bodies. We're more attuned to the environment, the surfaces we're walking on. We're not living in chronic fear. And when we have good regulation, the likelihood of us getting into traumatic events and being victim to that becomes much, much less. When we are still living in our survival stress, when we are still living with a dysregulated nervous system, we are kind of an open target, essentially, for accidents, people, future abuse, etc. We know this. And so one concept I'm thinking about a lot these days is something that I've been kind of calling the long lost art of looking both ways, right? Which I did a video on this a little while ago. But it's just this common sense. It's common sense. What do you do when you cross the street? I hope, whether or not there is traffic or not, you are still looking both ways. Whether you're crossing a path, you look both ways. Before you put the gas on and the light is green, I hope you don't just go because it's green. You first look both ways, because who knows who else might not be paying attention running that traffic light, right? Or that red light. There's so many ways that we can avoid getting into more traumatic stress by being regulated and connected to their environment. So to go back to why I'm just doing this impromptu live here on Instagram, someone asked and said that they felt that they really connected to the work that I do, and it just landed in a way that normally doesn't, even when other people talk about it. And one of your answers, the community here was, it's because I have regulation on board, and that is definitely part of the puzzle, but it's not everything. The second reason why it might be that when I'm speaking about this work and educating you and it's really landing is because this is my expertise. I am trained in this work. It is not a hobby. It's not something I got into to heal myself. It is my profession. And I am now, I'm going to turn 46 this year, I think. I have been studying the human system since 1993. If we count high school biology, since 1991. That's a lot of time. I'm not good with math, but I think that's more than 20 years. So what that means is that this is truly my craft. I am an artisan of working with the human system. I started in fitness. I started in exercise science. I studied applied human nutrition. I went in and did I had my bachelor's in exercise science. I did a master's degree in biomedical science and health science. I did research work at the academic level. I worked with people. I had subjects. I had nurses. I taught at low-level biology at the university. And then I got into the work that you know more, which is working with the nervous system, working with the mind-body connection, working with the traumatic responses that we store inside. I have not just done one training. I have done 3 intense trainings within this realm of holistic healing at this nervous system, somatic, neuroplastic level. So I am an expert. And what I'm seeing is, and this doesn't discredit those that are putting out their work and are creating YouTube channels and Facebook channels and Instagram channels and their own brands and their own coaching businesses. Many people go into these professions, these working jobs, if you will, because they healed something in their own system, and there's nothing wrong with that. But many of most, if not their training, is based on their own work that they did with themselves, not through consistent schooling in a university setting, in a professional training setting. Or maybe if they did do a little bit of that, it lacks the time, the street cred, the practice, and this concept of 10,000 hours. I think it was 4 years ago, I counted up my hours, and I had well surpassed 10,000 hours when I considered all my time working in fitness and working in trainings and assisting at trainings and working with my subjects when I was doing my research, one-on-one clients, group clients, the people I work with now, my team who I mentor and work with. There's a lot of time, there's a lot of expertise. And so if you're watching someone and the information isn't really sinking in, it doesn't necessarily always mean that they're not grounded and regulated. It just might be that they're new in their career and they haven't found their groove. It's hard to keep a lot of this information in your head and not, looking at notes as you're teaching this stuff. But when someone is an expert, they don't need to, I'm looking at my notes because this is the topic I want to talk about today. But if you were to ask me to talk about the nervous system and how it works and neuroplasticity and all the practices, I could go on for 10 hours about this stuff. And that is training, that is expertise. So that's the other reason why some of you might say or ask or mention, I can listen to you and it really sinks in. That's not by fluke, that's training. So, if you're looking to connect with a coach, a healer, a wellness provider, really look at their credentials, interview them, ask them. I've been saying over and over, if you read even a comment or a quote here on Instagram or any other social media feed and something you're not sure of, question that science, question what they've said, because often these pieces are taken out of context and then they're not described properly. And then we start to oversimplify this whole healing thing that we're all wanting a big piece of because we realize how much work we have to do within our own nervous systems. The next thing, I lied, there were actually only 4 things. So expertise, I've been trained. The next one's a little interesting. This is my job. I have chosen this work to be my job. It's my work. It's what I do every day. It's not a hobby. When I don't want to do it, I still do it because it's my work, it's my job. Now, what I'm going to say might sound odd. This isn't my passion, right? I know that seems really strange. It is my profession. It is my work. When I go on holiday, which is rare, but when I do, I'm not thinking about this. I unplug, and then I do what I am passionate about, which is hiking, being in natures, being immersed in beautiful hot springs pools, being in Italy, traveling, doing these things that I love. When I was younger, I was into more sport, skiing, paragliding. Those were really my passions, and they still are, but I've stopped some of the more crazier things. But this work is work. Hence why, again, going back to the first thing or the second thing, I've just been trained. There's expertise. So that's another thing, and that might shock some of you. Doesn't mean that I don't love this work, that I have a strong affinity for it. I have had an affinity for science since I was in university. I was raised by two doctors of veterinary medicine, so healing and science and taking care of things was just my world. I didn't know anything else. So it's my job. It's my work. It's what I do for a living. So that's why, again, I think the work really drops in, is because I do have a differentiation from my private life to this work. It doesn't mean that a lot of my private friends, they're colleagues of mine, and we all understand this work, but we're typically not sitting around a table having a bottle of wine talking about the nervous system and trauma. We're just shooting the shit about other things, Netflix shows, books, places we want to go, things we've seen, but it's rarely about the work. I saw another question here. No, I do not do private sessions anymore. The best way to find out about what I do and how to do my work, follow me and be a student within my programs, is to just go to my website. It's just my name, irenelyon.com. Okay. Next thing I'm going to say about this, it's timing. So the person that posed the comment, which was, wow, I'm really dropping into what you're saying right now, I can't take all credit to that, because it could be that they have done the work, have done the awareness, they are privy to what's happening in the world, and their system is ready for what I have to teach. So I can't take all credit for that. It's that each person is going to be different. And I'm thinking about a student who I met in the UK last year when I was teaching my up and down work with Elia Marak. I teach in-person workshops, and she was also someone who was in one of my online programs when I first started, and she kind of made a confession. She said, when I started this work online with you well over 5 years ago, I just didn't get it. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that level of awareness. It just wasn't there yet. And now it really landed in her. And so again, for all of you who are really landing with what I'm saying, give yourself some credit, because you've obviously done some research, you've searched, you want something more than just what the mainstream medical world is telling us is, about our health. You're looking for those next steps, and as we know, it really is this. So that's the other element to why this work might be landing really strongly with how I'm presenting it. Yes, it's because I'm regulated. Yes, it's because I've done my training. Yes, it's because I'm an expert. This is my work. This is my job. I practice. I hone my skills. And it's you guys as well. You are ready for this. If I was teaching this stuff, let's just say I was born 50 years ago, this wouldn't be landing with you. And this is why many of our mentors, my mentors and their mentors, they couldn't, they were at the beginning of this. This work expands, it gets bigger, just like our universe is getting bigger, and our world is desperately looking for that expansion right now. And again, it's timing. It's like we're moving forward through time, in time, whatever that means, and now it's like landing in a much different way because we need this work. Whereas 50 years ago, we didn't realize why we needed this work. The system wasn't ready for it. And that kind of goes to the last piece on this post-it note, which is the world is ready. The world is ready. And the world has to be ready, because it's hard for people to go into this work and do this level of healing when there are very few people doing it. One of my favorite books, I'm just seeing if there's any more comments here, is a book called Travels by Michael Crichton. And he was the founder of, he wrote Jurassic Park. Obviously, most people know the movies. They were books. He was the founder of the TV show ER. Remember George Clooney? That's, when the whole medical world kind of got on TV. And in that book, he talks about his dabblings with the esoteric, with energy. He was going to spoon bending parties in LA. He was a screenwriter. But before that, he was a doctor. He was a trained physician, MD. And his mind and his level of seeing the world didn't match up for the current medical model back then, and I think it was the 50s, and he had to quit. He just couldn't handle it. And then as he experimented with other things and meditation and energy work, again, he was a black sheep at that time. The world wasn't ready for that level of awareness. And if we look at Jurassic Park, there's some pretty strong themes in there around humanity and us just not seeing the bigger picture. So when I think about that book, Travels, and Michael Crichton, and sadly he's long passed, way too young, I think, a lot of his strain and stress, and he was clearly a very stressed and strained individual, it's because the time wasn't ready for him. I think if he had been born even 20 years later, he might still be with us, because the universe was just more aligned with his level of seeing things. So the world has to be ready for this too. And the more that we can open up to all of the amazingness that is here on our planet, and our potential with our crazy powerful brain and our ability to shift and focus and change things just with the power of our intention. And it's, it's very Star Wars, I know, but we have that capacity. And then when we put the biology into it and we really work with our physical structures, we're just off to the races. And we need to see things, I believe, from that macro point of view. It's more than a linear point of view. This whole idea of, Newtonian physics and Cartesian pieces where it's black and white and it's just one way or another way, binary. Sometimes that's true, but we're seeing that the world is way more quantum, way more magnificent and complex than what we give it credit for. And so again, to go back to this original piece, why it might be that my videos are really landing into your system and making sense. Again, quick review. Yes, I'm regulated. Yes, I'm grounded. I don't have embodiment because I'm thinking about what embodiment is and regulation. I live it. It's part of my world. It's in my environment. I hang out with people that have that as well. It's my world. It's my life. The next reason why I think these videos really land is this is my expertise. I've been trained for more than 20 years in this work. It's not just a hobby. I didn't just decide to do this because I healed myself. I did not go into this work in an attempt to heal my system. It was because I was interested in this craft. I also, the next thing is, to me, this is a job. This is a job. It's not necessarily my passion. I love the work. Yes. I couldn't do it if I didn't love it, but it's my work. It's my job. And so it's just what I do. It's what I'm here to do. Some could say that this was just why I was placed here, was to do this work, and maybe that's what it is. Who knows? And then the next thing was timing, your timing. All of us here are on a path, and this is really important when we think about wanting our friends and family members to get into this work. Anybody here want that to happen with people that they have in their world, maybe even a spouse, your kids? We can't force this upon anybody, and that's really hard because everybody has to show up in their own time and find it, and maybe we give them some clues and breadcrumb trails, but they gotta pick up the clue, they gotta sniff out the breadcrumb trails to find their truth and what they need to do. And then the final thing that comes back to the first question, which was, why are my videos really dropping for a lot of people, is the world's a little more ready now. It wasn't ready even 5 years ago. When I started this work, and I've talked about this in the past, I had business coaches telling me to never put the word nervous system or trauma on my website because it was too weird, too jargony. Nobody knew what it meant. And I had to take a stand and go, no, this is what I'm trained in. This is my expertise. And we know the science is showing us that when a nervous system, autonomic nervous system, is dysregulated and unwell due to early trauma, adversity, and all the bad stuff that occurs to us when we're little and in utero, we get sick. It's pretty plain as day. How we are in our physiology is determined by how we were handled, what our environment was, what was programmed into us, and then whether or not we get better or not is determined by what we do, not what was done to us in the past. And this is the part that really is hard for many, is that we got to leave the story and that stuff behind. Doesn't mean we get rid of it, but the story has to be dropped, and then we have to move forward so that we can do other things and not live a life where we're just constantly worried about all the things that didn't happen. And then, of course, that leaves us to not focus on all the things that could happen. So this science of neuroplasticity is very, very important. The ability for us to change and grow and expand and rewire and regulate a system that maybe never had regulation in the first place. This takes time. And that's the other thing. I don't sugarcoat this. This is real hard effing work. It's hard work, just like anybody who becomes a master at anything has to put in the time. They have to put in literally the blood, sweat, and tears, the practice. We have to show up. It can't be something we forget about for 2 months and go, oh, I should go back to that nervous system work. No, this is like eating and drinking clean food and clean water every day, getting rest, getting sunshine, getting movement, having good relationships. It's all part of it. So thanks everyone for being here and waving and giving me thumbs ups and all that sort of stuff. Again, if you're brand new here, thanks for hanging out and chiming in. If you've been around for a while, thank you for continuing to show up. If you haven't checked out what I do, because I do more than talk on Instagram and post pretty pictures, go to my site. There's always a link in my bio that usually goes to one of my pieces of education video. This week, the video's all on why can't I sleep? I get into the sleep question. So check that out. If you haven't tried one of my programs, definitely do. Right now, you can only sign up for one of them. It is the 21-day nervous system tune-up. Before my battery runs out, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for being here, and just keep showing up and know that you're here for a reason. It's not by accident. And I'm going to keep showing up too, because this is my job. All right. Bye for now, everybody. Ciao, ciao.